Diversification has been deemed the only free lunch in the investment world. But what is diversification? How do you use it? And more importantly, how do you know that you really have it? Hey, we're going to talk to Adam Harter. He's our Chief Investment Officer at the Financial Enhancement Group. Adam is a chartered financial analyst, and he and I are going to break down for you exactly what diversification is. Remember, if you're doing this on your own, that is your business, and we wish you nothing but the best. But if you're looking for a fiduciary, that's our business, and we're more than happy to help. Let's talk about diversification and what it means to you. Well, good morning and welcome to Consider This Program. I'm your host, Joe Clark.
And I'm Adam Harter.
And we are happy to have you along, Adam, you as the rest of the people that are out there. So we have much to discuss in this first conversation that we're going to have, and it's over diversification. So let's just get this out there real quickly. As a CFA, but trying to do it in English, how would we explain what diversification means?
What I like about this is one of the conversations. You don't have to make it too complicated. Diversification is not putting your eggs in one basket. I mean, you can start right there with the most basics, right? I think we all get that to some extent.
It's a nice, sweet, simple way to be able to put it. And what we're going to get to by the end of this segment, however, is how elusive diversification can really be. And I think that's the problem when people have the same basket, they have multiple baskets with a similar egg. But we'll get to that.
Now it starts to get tricky.
We'll get to that one, right? So when we look at an investment portfolio, when you look at, and right now at the time of this recording, we're responsible for a little over $600 million of other people's money that we take care of. When we look at that and when we do it, how important do you put diversification in the list of things that you're looking for to build those portfolios?
I would actually put it straight to the top when you think about it, because rule number one in this is much like you would have in the medical profession: do no harm. And lack of diversification can induce a lot of harm. And that can come either way, being too aggressive, not knowing it, or too conservative and not knowing it. And one of the best examples of this is a meeting with a doctor a couple years ago who was about to retire and had several different funds in the 401k. We see this a lot of time, but was getting ready to retire in just a few months and use that money to live on. But those 5 different funds were all basically stocks, right? It was S&P 500, large cap growth, large cap blend. Put them all together, they were all stocks. And so when you say how important is diversification, before we even got very far out of that meeting, it was an identification that they was not diversified and harm was about to be there. So that was really kind of stop potential bleeding. So I put it right to the top of the stack.
I would agree with that, certainly as a CFP. So I understand as a certified financial planner versus a chartered financial analyst, those are two entirely different skill sets. Part of what I learned as a certified financial planner is the concepts that Adam has to employ. What he learned was really the nitty gritty of what each of those concepts are. Now, some of you are out there going, well, I've heard of diversification and grandma said not to put all your eggs in one basket. That just makes sense. But come on, isn't that really the only strategy that you need? And what you're going to hear is as further you go down the rabbit hole, you're going to start to hear people talk about growth and value. Right. So if you've ever seen a Morningstar box, that's the kind of the most famous one. It's broken up into size and style. So when you're looking at your 401k, you're going to see things like growth, blend, and value, large cap, mid cap, small cap. And as you know, if you've listened to the show for a while, capitalization merely means the price of one share of stock times the number of shares are outstanding. So market cap's not based on the price of the company share. It's based on all of the shares that are outstanding. This is going to be important, not that you'll be quizzed on it, but this is going to be important as we get to the later part of this program. So Adam took diversification to the top of the list, and believe me, from our risk barometer, which is proprietary, to multiple other things, there's a lot of things that he could have picked to put as number one. So this is important. So Adam, go back to your doctor if you want to. Now we've got our 401k. How do they know that they're truly diversified? What does that mean even?
So we'll go back to the eggs in different baskets, and I think that's going to be starting number one. And a problem that is well defined and well stated, it can often be a problem solved. And so I would define that by clearly articulating and really defining what is that basket and identifying what they are and how many you need out there. And so how you know you're diversified is constructing those main baskets that you have. You certainly have to have a stock and bond, say, side of the table of the baskets. And then you need a few different type of stocks. Just like you mentioned, different sizes are important, but then also different geographies. There are limits to all of these, and I think we need to come back to that. There are limits to all of these forms of diversification, but you need to have well-defined baskets that have stocks, bonds, big stocks, small stocks, U.S. stocks, international. And that's not to say, by the way, don't confuse this, that every basket needs eggs in it all time or right proportioned. We simply want to leave that diversification not to have them all in one basket. That's the primary harm.
There you go. So, because what you said at the beginning was so wise, let's hit that real quickly. I think it was Einstein. Don't quote me on that, but I think it was Einstein that said if he had an hour to solve a problem, the first 95% of the time, or 55 minutes, would be coming up with the right question. Right? And that's what Adam said. Sometimes just defining the question correctly can get you to the right solution. So we want to make sure that we are diversified. The second thing, when you look at that size and style box, by definition, there's 9 boxes, right? 3 style, 3 blend, or three size, 3 style. There's 9 different boxes. And some people have a goal or objective of having money at all times in each of those 9, where you may have more in large cap value than you do in small cap growth. They have money in all 9 boxes. We don't believe that at all in terms of the financial enhancement group and in terms of how we model money. So, that is a critical part. So we're stepping this up a little bit, right? We went to that first one where we talked about what diversification was and how important it is. Adam gave it a score of 1. Believe me, that matters a lot. Number 2, we talked about understanding that you're truly diversified. But that doesn't necessarily mean overly diversified, right? There's a well-known commentator named James Cramer on CNBC that says you can over-diversify, and he tells people to have 4 or 5 positions, and that's plenty. Having 30 or 40 is probably too many for you to keep track of.
Yeah, and that's utterly ridiculous.
I would buy. In our case, we never have more than 5% of our money in one position.
Yes.
And I totally get that. But we pay you and we pay Andrew to spend nothing but all day long paying attention to those 20. I mean, if you're an engineer and you're at work and you're out doing something, they don't necessarily have the time or no other life to be able to keep track like you do of what's in this position.
Oh, sure. But I do believe this in my heart of hearts. And the reason the 4 or 5 is an utterly ridiculous notion that you could be properly diversified is to not understand what we just went through, is to have a lack of respect for how quickly things can change in the world. And it's an overconfidence that even your forecast to how you think the world will work out will be. So think about all of the companies that aren't going to make it, or all those that just happen to have all the things fall into place with the government programs to be able to stay alive. I mean, a whole lot of things could have changed to eliminate one of those 4 or 5.
That's all it takes.
That's all it takes.
So now back to where we are. They're commonly, and I work with a lot of CPAs. We manage their money, we manage their 401k plans, but a lot of my CPA partners that we meet, Adam, look at life and they've heard about academically this concept called modern portfolio theory. Now, we don't have a lot of time, but break down real quickly what that is and how we use or don't use it.
Yeah. So modern portfolio theory was really the first major attempt to put some math behind this common sense notion of diversification. And it was a couple of Nobel Prize winning academians that instructed that you really need only 2 variables, and using 2 variables, which is how volatile something is and what its average return is. Using those 2 variables and very complex and very formal equations, you can come up with the best portfolio with those 2 inputs. That's the most simple I can put it, is really putting a mathematical framework behind what we knew as common sense.
So I had to learn this, and Adam may or may not, he may not approve of this message. Remember, we're partners. That doesn't mean that we always agree on everything any more than my wife and I do. But I have never been a fan of modern portfolio theory because I didn't have the academic stuff behind it. It made sense to me in my head, but I'll never forget, Adam, as we went into 2008 and we went into January, right? This is all based on mathematical models when you get into the modern portfolio stuff. And the cover of the Chicago Tribune said events that are models, that's modern portfolio theory, that suggest should not occur once in 10,000 years, occurred 3 days in a row. And what we know is that volatility beckons more volatility, and flat days beckon more flat days. And so, if you're having to do this on your own, perhaps modern portfolio portfolio theory may give you some insight. But if you're dealing with a professional and they're relying on that, I would strongly argue that perhaps you need a different professional.
Well, I think it's even simpler than that. The fellow that really created this, Harry Markowitz, actually didn't use it to manage his own money. And it's very helpful. I mean, it created a whole field of study and made us better in so many ways, but it's like a lot of basic math. I'm sure there's a lot of basic math that got us to the moon, but it was the other things developed on that framework that got us there.
He actually, and it's all about feeling. So from modern portfolio theory did come the study of behavioral finance, which I am a big fan of. You know, that's partially because of his interview. I think it was 1955, somewhere around that period of time, where he said, I just couldn't help myself. You know, even though I knew what I was supposed to do based on math, I could not get myself to do what I invariably knew was right to do. And, that's just a part of it, folks. Part of what a professional is able to help provide is to give you guidance to make sure that you're able to stick through it, the thick and the thin, right? To be able to have that discipline. And you're able to rest that on our shoulders as opposed to putting it on yours. Now, that said, again, if this is something you want to do on your own, that is your business. But if you're looking for a fiduciary, that is our business at the Financial Enhancement Group. And you can give us a call at 800-928-4001. Or go to our website at yourlifeafterwork.com. Get signed up for a Next Steps meeting. It's complimentary. We'll sit down and share some of these ideas with you. 800-928-4001.